Hello everyone, today I am going to discuss the bone humerus. Humerus is the bone of the arm and it is one of the strongest and the longest bone of the upper limb. Coming to the parts of the humerus, it consists of the upper end, lower end and the intervening shaft. The upper end, it consists of the head, neck, greater tubercle, lesser tubercle and the intertubercular sulcus, and the shaft, which is cylindrical in the upper part and triangular in the lower part. The lower end, it consists of the projection which is present laterally is called as the capitulum, and the pulley shaped structure, that is the trochlea, which is present medially, and the prominent projection which is present at the medial most end, that is the medial epicondyle, and laterally is the lateral epicondyle. The fossa above the capitulum is the radial fossa, and the fossa above the trochlea is the coronoid fossa, and behind posteriorly there is one large fossa which is called as the olecranon fossa. Now, how to hold the humerus in the anatomical position? You have to see that the upper end, which is consisting of the head, is directed upwards, backwards and medially, and this head, it will articulate with the glenoid cavity of the scapula to form the shoulder joint, and the greater and the lesser tubercle should be facing anteriorly, and below the olecranon fossa, it should be present posteriorly. So this is how you are going to hold the humerus in the anatomical position. So what I am holding the humerus, it belongs to the right side. Now coming to the features and the attachments of the humerus, in that first the upper end, it consists of the head which is round and it forms about 1/3 of the sphere, and this head is covered by the hyaline cartilage which is thicker at the center and thinner at the periphery, and this head is going to form the shoulder joint by articulating with the glenoid cavity of the scapula. Next, the neck of the humerus. There are three necks, that is the anatomical neck, surgical neck and the morphological neck. First, coming to the anatomical neck, you can see this constriction which is present immediately adjoining the head of the humerus is called as the anatomical neck of the humerus, and this anatomical neck, it gives attachment to the capsule of the shoulder joint which is deficient superiorly for the long tendon of the biceps brachii. Then this capsule of the shoulder joint, it extends medially below the anatomical neck for about 1 to 2 centimeters up to the shaft. Next, coming to the surgical neck of the humerus, this constriction what you are seeing is the surgical neck of the humerus which is present at the upper end of the shaft of the humerus, and this forms an important feature of the humerus as it is the most commonly fractured site of the humerus, and this surgical neck is related to the axillary nerve and the anterior and the posterior circumflex humeral vessels. Then the morphological neck, which is present about 0.5 centimeters above the surgical neck of the humerus, and it forms the junction between the epiphysis and the diaphysis, and it is represented by the epiphyseal line. Next, moving to the greater tubercle of the humerus. This projection what you are seeing is the greater tubercle of the humerus, and it has got the three impressions for the three muscles, that is upper impression, middle impression and the inferior impression for the supraspinatus, infraspinatus and the teres minor respectively, and these muscle attachment can be remembered by the mnemonic SIT, that is SIT. Then this is the lesser tubercle which is present in the front, and it gives attachment to the subscapularis muscle, and the groove whatever you are seeing in between the greater tubercle and the lesser tubercle, this is called as the intertubercular groove or the intertubercular sulcus or the bicipital groove, through which passes the long tendon of the biceps brachii along with the ascending branch of the anterior circumflex humeral artery. Then it has got the lateral lip and the medial lip and a floor, and the muscles attached are, to the lateral lip we have the pectoralis major, to the medial lip is the teres major, and in the floor of the intertubercular sulcus is the latissimus dorsi, which can be remembered by the mnemonic lady between the two majors, that is the L of the lady stands for the latissimus dorsi, whereas the two majors, that is the pectoralis major and the teres major. Next, moving to the shaft of the humerus. This shaft, you can see it is cylindrical in the upper part, whereas it is triangular in the lower part. It has got 3 borders and 3 surfaces. First, coming to the borders, the anterior border, it extends from the lateral lip of the intertubercular sulcus, and in the lower part it becomes rounded and smooth, and finally ends above the radial fossa. Then the medial border, which is extending from the medial lip of the intertubercular sulcus, and it becomes prominent in the lower part, forming the lateral supracondylar ridge. And this lateral supracondylar ridge, it gives attachment to the medial intermuscular septum. And you can see there is a impression, or it is more rough in the middle part of the medial border, which gives insertion to the coracobrachialis muscle. Then just above the medial epicondyle, in the lower part of the medial border, there is a origin of the humeral head of the pronator teres muscle. Next, moving to the posterior border. Posterior border is indistinct in the upper part, but in the lower part it becomes more prominent, forming the lateral supracondylar ridge. And this lateral supracondylar ridge in the lower part, it gives attachment to the lateral intermuscular septum, and the upper 2/3 of the lateral supracondylar ridge, it gives origin to the brachioradialis, and lower 1/3 origin to the extensor carpi radialis longus muscle. Moving to the surfaces, first the anterolateral surface, which is present between the anterior border and the posterior border. In the middle there is a more prominent V-shaped tuberosity. You can see this is called as the deltoid tuberosity, which gives insertion to the deltoid muscle. Then moving to the anteromedial surface, which is present between the anterior border and the medial border. In the upper part of this surface consists of the floor of the intertubercular sulcus, whereas in the middle part you can see there is a foramen here, more close to the medial border, which is called as the nutrient foramen, which is directed downwards. The lower part of the shaft, including the anterolateral and the anteromedial surface, will give origin to the brachialis muscle. Next, moving to the posterior surface, which is present between the medial border and the lateral border. The upper part of the posterior surface has got an oblique ridge, which is directed downwards and laterally, and this ridge will give origin to the lateral head of the triceps brachii. And just below medial to this oblique ridge, you can see this groove. It is called as the radial groove, through which passes the radial nerve and the profunda brachii vessels. And the area below the radial groove will give origin to the medial head of the triceps brachii. Next, coming to the lower end of the humerus, it consists of the convex projection present laterally, which is called as the capitulum. It will articulate with the head of the radius, and this pulley shaped structure which is present medially is called as the trochlea, which will articulate with the trochlear notch of the ulna. Then the medial most prominent projection, what you are seeing, this is called as the medial epicondyle, and which will give origin to the common flexors of the front of the forearm, and behind this medial epicondyle it is related to the ulnar nerve. Next, more lateral projection, what you are seeing, this is called as the lateral epicondyle, which will give origin to the common extensors of the back of the forearm. Then behind the lateral epicondyle, it will give origin to the anconeus muscle. The head of the radius will fit into the radial fossa during the full flexion of the elbow, and the coronoid process of the ulna will fit into the coronoid fossa of the humerus during the full flexion of the elbow. And here the olecranon process of the ulna will fit into the olecranon fossa of the humerus during the full extension of the elbow, and the area above the radial fossa and the coronoid fossa and the olecranon fossa, it will give attachment to the capsular ligament of the elbow joint. Coming to the applied aspects of the humerus, first you have to know which are the nerves which are related to the parts of the humerus. Around the cervical neck is the axillary nerve. Then in the radial groove or the spiral groove is the radial nerve, and behind the medial epicondyle is the ulnar nerve. And the important sites of the fractures are first the cervical neck, then the shaft and the supracondylar area. The supracondylar fracture is more common in the children when they fall with the outstretched hand, and when there is a fracture of this region, the lower fragment of the fractured end is displayed backwards and there is an undue prominence of the elbow. Then the median nerve and the brachial artery are injured in this fracture, and if there is an involvement of the brachial artery, it will lead to the Volkmann's ischemic contracture. There is a process above the condylar area which is on the anteromedial surface, which is called as the supracondylar process, which is present about 5 centimeters above the lower end, and from this process there appears a fibrous band which is called as the Struthers ligament, which will be attached in the lower part to the medial epicondyle, and if there is a formation of this Struthers ligament, the median nerve and the brachial artery will pass through this foramen. Non-union or the delayed union occurs if there is a fracture at the junction of the upper 1/3 and the middle 1/3, because this is the least blood supplied area of the humerus. Then the most common site for the fracture is the surgical neck of the humerus, where the axillary nerve can be damaged. Sometimes a foramen can be present just above the trochlea, which is called as the supratrochlear foramen. Coming to the ossification of the humerus, one primary center appears for the shaft during the 8th week of the intrauterine life. Then 3 secondary centers for the upper end, for which the head it appears during the 1st year of life, for the greater tubercle during the 3rd year of life, and for the lesser tubercle during the 5th year of life. All these 3 will fuse during the 7th year of life and ultimately fuse with the shaft during the 20th year of life. Coming to the lower end, there are 4 secondary centers for the lower end. One for the capitulum, it appears during the 2nd year of life. Then for the trochlea during the 10th year of life. For the lateral epicondyle during the 12th year of life. All these 3 will fuse during the 14th year of life and ultimately fuse with the shaft during the 16th to 17th year of life. Then one separate secondary center appears for the medial epicondyle during the 6th year of life, which will fuse with the shaft during the 18th year of life. So this is the ossification of the humerus. Thank you.